Okay, so we're going to turn now to something called the least common multiple. And before we learn what that is, we need to distinguish between factors and multiples. So multiples is the new word you're seeing today, and factors we worked with in the last section. And what we know about factors is that factors are numbers that divide into the number we're interested in. Okay? So if we talk about, for instance, the number 10, what are its factors? Well, 1 and 10 and 2 and 5 are its factors. Those are numbers that divide into 10. When we talk about multiples of a number, we're talking about numbers that that number divides into. So now when we talk about multiples of 10, we need 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So multiples are bigger numbers, right? They're bigger than the numbers. And it has the word multiply, almost has the word multiply in it, okay? And factors are smaller or equal to the number. So let's talk about this example where we've got factors of 6 and multiples of 6. So what are the factors of 6 that you can think of? If you're thinking of 1 and 6 and 2 and 3, that's exactly right. Now multiples of 6, okay? Those are numbers that are bigger than 6 or equal to 6. So what we do is we can start with 6, okay? So 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12. So 12 is the next multiple of 6 after 6. What's the next multiple of 6 after 12? Well, that would be 6 times 3, or 18. And then a couple of more. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. And the list goes on and on and on without any end. Okay, it's an infinite list, unlike factors. Factors are a finite list. We have 4 factors of 6. Okay, so to identify multiples of a number, we just multiply it by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, and keep going as long as we want. All right, so common multiples. We're going to be talking about comparing two numbers and looking for common multiples. And those would be multiples that are shared by the two numbers. It could be more than two numbers. But if we look at the pair 8 and 12, okay? So let's identify some multiples of 8 and some multiples of 12, and then let's see what they have in common, what the common multiples are. So starting with 8, okay, the first multiple of 8 is 8 times 1, or 8 itself. And then 8 times 2, 16. You can always use a calculator. 8 times 3 is, whoops, I made a mistake here, sorry. 8 times 3 is 24. Let me get back my red marker here. 24. And then 8 times, that was 8 times 3. 8 times 4 is 32. And then 8 times 5 is 40. Okay, and now if we look at multiples of 12, okay, same thing. Remember what we did before? We'll start with 12. 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. You seeing a common multiple yet? 12 times 3 is 36. 12 times 4 is 48. And they go on. The list goes on and on. Okay? So what we do to identify the common multiples is we just look for them. So here we go. 24 is a multiple of both 8 and 12. Okay? Why is it helpful to know common multiples? Well, when we get into adding and subtracting fractions, they're going to need to have common denominators. And those common denominators are going to be common multiples of the number. And what we always want is the least common multiple. Okay? The least common multiple. If we went a little further with 8 and 12, we would find other common multiples, but 24 is the smallest. It's the least common multiple, okay? So that's going to really help us if I wanted to add 3 8s, let's say, plus 5 12s, and we're not going to do that yet, okay? But when we do, our common denominator is going to be 24, because it's the smallest number that both 8 and 12 divide into. So that's the whole point of finding these common multiples, okay? When we were finding the greatest common factor, that was when we wanted to simplify fractions. The least common multiple will help us add and subtract them. Okay, so far? All right, so let's see if we'll do these together, and then you'll have a couple to bring in tomorrow. So we're going to find the least common multiple between 10 and 16. Okay, so we're going to start, we put 10 here in green, and we're going to write its multiples. Okay, so what's the first multiple of 10? 10 itself, right? 10 times 1. And then 20, and 30, and 40, and 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and so on. Okay, so now we'll work with 16. And I should probably grab a calculator. Let's see if I can do it without. So 16 times 16 is 16, times 2 is 32. Add another 16 to that, I get 48. Add another 16 to that, I get 64. And then another 16 is 80. And can you see why I could stop at 80? Can you see why I can stop at 80? Because I hit it. All right? So I've got 80 here and 80 here. So 80 is the least common multiple, and we can abbreviate that. LCM is 80. And that says is. Okay, how about between 20 and 25? I wonder if maybe sometimes you could even do it in your head. Can you figure it out? I'll start to write it here while you're thinking. So 20, we'll do in green. 25, we'll do in blue. Okay. So 20, we'll start with 20 times 1, 20 times 2. You can see it's just going up, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Can I stop there? I could, because I know 25 goes into 100. So just repeating the process with 25, and you don't need to. If you can see, it's going to be 100 right up. 25, 50, 75, 100, and so on. And we've got it with 100, right? So 100 is the LCM between 20 and 25. It's the least common multiple. Okay? A trick to finding the least common multiple would be to only deal with the bigger number and double it, triple it, quadruple it, and so on until you find the number that the smaller number goes into. So for example, with 16, we've got it doubled here, tripled here, quadrupled here, multiplied by 5 here. When we finally get to 80, we recognize it's a multiple of 10. We can stop there. So 80 is our number. With 20 and 25, same thing. Start with 25, double it, get 50, triple it, get 75, quadruple it, get 100. Can stop there because we know 20 goes into 100. And if you're not sure, just take your calculator. Divide 50 by 20, divide 75 by 20, divide 100 by 20. You'll see which one works. Okay, so the trick is just to work with a bigger number. All right. For monomials, the least common multiple is always going to contain all of the variables, okay? And for the variables that are in common, it'll always include the higher power, okay? So if we're looking for the least common multiple between xy squared and x squared y, okay, well, the least common multiple is going to contain both variables for both x and y, and it's going to contain the highest power of each. So the highest power of x here is x squared. It's in this term, right? And the highest power of y is in this term. So x squared, y squared is going to be our least common multiple, okay? Because to get from x y squared to x squared y, we can see we have to multiply by an x. If we multiply by an x, we'll get there. It's a times x, okay? And for x squared y, to get to x squared y squared, can you see that we need to multiply by a y? And we're not going to be doing that now, but that's what we will be doing when we put them into fractions. Okay, let's just look at one more. We've got 9r squared and 15rst. Okay, so let's do the number part first. We've got 9 and 15, and we're looking for the least common multiple. So let's use the trick. Let's take 15, we'll multiply it by 1, that doesn't work, 9 doesn't go in. Multiply it by 2, we get 30. That doesn't work, 9 doesn't go in. 15 times 3 is 45, and look, we hit it, because 9 goes into 45 6 times. So we know the least common multiple here, I'll write it in red, least common multiple, the number part is going to be 45. It's the smallest number that both 9 and 15 divide into. It's going to have an R, an S, and a T, all the variables. Okay, and it's also going to have the highest power of all the variables. The highest power of R is to the second power, and then for S and T just to the first power. So that's it. Okay, watch the video again if you need to. I went kind of fast. These are your 3 you tries. You're going to start your homework with these problems and bring them to school tomorrow. You want to find the least common multiple. Okay? Thanks for listening.